Welcome to r/MaliciousCompliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. Thank you, friends, for subscribing to the channel, and for so many likes. The first story: new boss threatened me with dismissal, so I left. The second story: shop manager was fired because he tried to do my father's job, although he shouldn't have done it. The third story: company did not pay me money for the work, so I started to do a minimum of work, and soon I quit. The first story is: think about if you want to be employed here. Will do, boss. So this is from over a decade ago, but it's the only time I've ever quit a job. I work for Target on their overnight team, 10 p.m. to 6:30 a.m., and eventually a specialist position came up, for which I applied and was granted. This was the position of receiver, scheduled to work 6 a.m. to 2:30 p.m., which basically was the person who would take in vendor orders, i.e. not things that were sent straight from corporate, but instead the Coca-Cola guy or the Lay's potato chip guy, etc., and specialty orders that came in at times other than the main truck. This was a job where instead of one major task, you dealt with about 20 minor ones throughout the day, and your day varied based on the whims of the people who were bringing things into you. We had a delivery cutoff of 12 p.m., but management would always say just take things no matter when they came. I generally was really good about managing my time and making sure if I needed to stay late for something important I did, and if it was something minor, say the Harlequin romance books that could wait overnight to process, I'd get it first thing in the morning. I had a good rapport with my boss, and I got great reviews. Then my boss got a promotion, and my new boss was a piece of SH. The new boss, we can call him John because that was his name, F you, John, was a tyrant of the pettiest type. He'd wonder why things were left overnight when I wasn't busy earlier in the day when he saw me, because I'd completed all my tasks and I can't make UPS come faster than they do. When Target's corporate told my department it was busy enough for a 20-hour-a-week worker, he refused to let me get anyone for longer than my 30-minute lunch breaks. The straw that broke my back was P-Fresh. For those of you who didn't work at Target in the early 2000s, P-Fresh was what they called their new initiative to have groceries in the stores. It was a big deal for them, and my store was one of the pilot stores in our area. I'd be the first person to have to deal with it, and then I would have to teach receivers in the area how it works by having them shadow me for a day at my store, and me in theirs when they got their fresh food. The fresh food came in a separate truck that arrived at 4 a.m. I expected, like I was informed, I would simply have to process it first thing in the morning when I got to work. Instead, John decided that my schedule was going to be changed to 4 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Getting up at 3 a.m. to be at work at 4 a.m. was not fun, but I dealt with it because I was a team player. However, John still insisted I needed all of my work done by the time I left at 12:30 p.m., an impossibility when the cutoff for deliveries was 12 p.m. I still prioritized things as good as I could, and nothing urgent was left undone for more than 24 hours, when Target was pretty good at making sure we had plenty of time to receive things before they had to hit the floor for street dates and such. The straw that broke my back was when the normal specialist position was terminated. Basically, Target wanted those special positions in the normal chain of command, which is fine. However, when they did this, they also gave lots of power to John. You see, it was in my old position that I had weekends off, because people don't deliver on the weekends, and was not required to work holidays, along with being guaranteed 40 hours a week Monday through Friday position. When this change came through, HR informed us that we had a week to decide whether we wanted the position, or if we wanted to go to another position in the company, or if we wanted severance. HR informed me that nothing would really be changing with my job, because it was still important, whereas other jobs, like the jewelry counter, weren't considered as important, and were being rolled in with other things. I was going to stay with the position until John brought me into the office later that day. He told me he was tired of my poor attitude involving getting things done, so he was changing my schedule to a split shift. Basically, he wanted me to come in from 4 to 5 a.m., then go home for an hour, then come back at 6 a.m. and work until 1:30 p.m. He also told me that any overtime would no longer be allowed, that I'd have to start working one weekend a month and holidays. He also wrote me up for something that I did not do, but the person who covered my lunches did, under the guise of me not training them properly. His words were, "You need to think long and hard about how you're working, and think about if you want to be employed here in a month." I told him he was absolutely right. I told him I'd be right back. I had to run to the restroom. Instead, I went to the HR and told them I'm taking the severance, and as it was 12:25 p.m., I'm guessing this is my last day. I then go back to John and tell him what I just said. He told me that I had to come back next week to train my replacement. I walked out of that building happier than I'd been in the last 3 years working there. I got texts over the next few months of the fallout. The receiving department was an effing nightmare for months, and since I was the only one who knew how to handle their refrigerated trucks, they lost an entire truck worth of merchandise that week. That was not a good look for them. Additionally, corporate had to send out people from out of the area to cover all of the training I was supposed to provide, which cost them a lot of money and made corporate even more peeved at John. Last I heard, he had been let go, and the next place he worked for fired him for harassment. I had a month's vacation where I got totally prepared for WoW Cataclysm, and then I took a new job. I was as happy as a clam. The second story is, that'll cost you. I was helping my youngest daughter pack up the truck to move over the weekend. We had a good amount of people, so the work went quick. There was close to an hour before they had to leave. There was my daughter, her maternal grandfather driving, and another car following, with more things, plus her 2 kids. Her grandfather worked with my father in the same mill, and once in a while worked together. This was a story he laughed as he told it. Cast, Dad, Roy, the grandfather to my daughter, shop supervisor, general manager. This is as close to how Roy told it and how I remember what he said. There was a piece of equipment needing fixed. He said what it was, but I have no clue what he was talking about. Just remember this cost close to $300,000 back in the mid-80s. It was the original piece from when the mill opened in 1968, so parts were obsolete, and Dad had to make them by hand. Roy said the bearing burnt up and stripped some teeth from the main gear. From what he was saying, Dad not only made the gear by hand, he also made a puller to get the gear off, because that bearing needed replaced was behind it. Dad had gone to get the puller when the shop supervisor came over to talk with Roy. He asked how long the job would be, and he was told at least 5 days. 3 days to make or repair the new gear, and another 2 days for tear down and set up. Roy said Dad might be able to fix this one, and if that was the case, 3 days maximum. The shop super asked why Roy was just sitting there and not taking the gear off. He explained where Dad had gone and what he was getting, and he'd be back in a minute or two. This was not good enough for the shop supervisor, and he grabbed a sledgehammer and said, "If you just tap it with this, it should come loose enough to just be pulled up with your hand." Dad had just stepped into the room and hollered up for the shop supervisor to stop before he breaks something. I guess he looked right at Dad and smacked the gear. I have no idea what it was made out of, but he hit it in just the right spot to break the gear into a couple of pieces. Needless to say, Dad and Roy were upset. They walked into the office of the general manager and told him what just happened, and instead of the 3 days they could have had it done in, it'll now take the 5 days or so. He was peeved. First, the shop supervisor is not to touch any tool unless passing it to the person using it, and another is he's not to try any repairs himself under any circumstance. The next day when Dad and Roy got to the machine, there was a gear sitting there. The shop supervisor came over and said he had it flown in from somewhere in the state, and it cost $20,000 because it was air expressed. Dad tried telling him that's the wrong gear, and he'll just build one he knows will work. Shop supervisor told him to use the gear he bought because he wasn't going to waste that much company money without using what he bought. Here is the MC. Dad and Roy got the bearing changed and were done getting the gear into place. It was made from a different material and a few other major differences. When they were all done, they called over the shop supervisor and the general manager to show how the machine is fixed. Roy and Dad gave the shop supervisor the honor of starting it up and showing how well it's working. With a big smile, he started it up. It ran well for about the first 5 minutes of the 15-minute test run when it started making odd noises. Before the shop supervisor could hit the emergency stop button, there was a loud bang and lots of screeching metal. Dad and Roy took the covering off and saw that not only the gear was destroyed, but it was in tiny little pieces all through the machine. The main rod where the bearing got replaced had broken in a couple of places. It would cost the company more money to buy the parts and fix this one than it would be to order one from Japan. Within 6 weeks, the Japanese workers bought the new machine, but had it set up and calibrated. This cost the mill just under $3 million, where it would have cost under $50,000 if Dad and Roy were left to fix it. Since the shop supervisor wasn't part of the union, he was fired on the spot. When the mill fired him and wouldn't even let him on the property, he had to wait for security to bring everything from his office. Roy said the shop supervisor wasn't made to pay back any money for his major mess-up, but his name was blacklisted in the industry. He moved away within a month, and as far as Roy knew, no one had heard from him since. Dad and Roy didn't get any real bonus for the job, but there was a little extra on their paycheck the next week. Roy said he can't remember how much it was, but it wasn't a huge amount, but it made a difference. I love hearing stories about my dad about work. He always had a warped sense of humor, so any MC by him was usually a doozy. But it wasn't just at work. Anywhere was not safe from him. Too bad he isn't here to tell me more stories, but I have memories of some, and I hear more from people he was friends with or worked with. I hope you enjoyed reading them as much as I loved hearing them. And the last story is, you want to screw me over on my raise? That's okay. Take a hard hit on productivity. This happened around 2 years ago at my old job, and shocker, it's the main reason I quit recently. My job basically was a very easy warehousing job. I basically only pulled orders at this point. Later on there, I would be trained on everything else, from shipping, kitting, put away, everything. But I was a perfect fit for that, since I love driving order picker. I was especially good at it. The bare minimum you had to hit in an 8-hour shift was around 230 boxes pulled, or 230 labels if you want to be precise. Since organization was a strong suit, after a few weeks, I was consistently able to hit over 350, then 400, topping out around 425. I always worked, and with other people quitting, within a year I was one of the most experienced people in my area. With training new employees, helping on certification of vehicles, and coming in on weekends when work needs to be finished, I felt like an asset to the team. Being one of the most experienced people over there, I was offered a raise to keep my numbers over 400 daily. Sure, it's a college job, but if I'm able to get more money by doing my job as well as I usually do it, sure. I accept, and they said my wage was updated and approved, so I got right to work and pulled my end of the deal. A week went by, same paycheck. Another week, same paycheck. Huh? What? I go into my manager's office and tell him calmly that my raise didn't get put into my paycheck. I get told, we thought about it and we feel as if it's within your job's responsibilities to be doing what you're doing, so we will not be giving you a monetary increase. We feel it's within your job's responsibilities to be doing what you're doing. So, in order to get back, I realized that if they don't think I deserve a raise, then why should I do all the extra stuff around my workplace? Suddenly, I dropped my daily quota to the bare minimum. You need me to stay over to help complete orders? Nah, I'm going home. My shift ended 5 minutes ago. Shelves started to become disorganized, because I didn't fix them as I went. About the disorganized shelves, as people pull parts, stuff gets a little disorganized. We had cubbies. Technically, it was Putaway's job to reorganize the shelves, but I did it as I went. They never did it because nobody would ever correct them. I did it because it made everyone's job a little bit easier, and it looked better. Anything small that I would do to help out, I stopped doing. Little by little, complaints started to file in, from the lowest on the totem pole, working its way up slowly. Within 2 weeks, I got called back and was told that I was given the raise, and it would be in this week's paycheck. I quit 5 months ago. I'm not getting any back pay. I was offered a raise 3 times over the course of half a year, and it fell through every time. I actually get my first paycheck today from my new job, so I'm celebrating that. I hope you love these stories. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to know when the new video comes out.